All right,
okay.
We're going.
Can you see this now?
Yep, we got it.
Awesome. Yep.
Oh, go ahead and put that, go ahead and put it in presentation mode. I think we are good.
Yeah, I'm just taking a bit here, taking a while.
Well, as we get that up and running, welcome everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with you all tonight. And Bob, thanks for having us. It's definitely our pleasure to be able to chat with you all a little bit. We're going to go through just a little bit of material. We have some slides just to kind of give some thoughts and ideas, reminders, I like to call them. And we're going to leave some time at the end for discussion, for questions, and anything that you want to kind of bring up as we go through this. Obviously, we are in a place right now that has given us, and we were talking about this a little bit right when I jumped on, it's given us challenges and it's given us opportunities. And I think leading from this space that we call compassionate leadership right now is one of the most important things we could do. We're seeing research, we're seeing numbers, we're seeing data, and a lot of these things that are coming up right now are telling us that, we are the most technologically connected society ever, clearly. Yet we stand in the midst right now of being the most disconnected at the same time. And, I was saying that phrase pre-COVID because I think we've been in this space of disconnect. We're all so busy. We have 1,000 plates in the air. We are rushing off from this place to this place, trying to get everything done. And I think the truth of all of that is that we've been given, as difficult and challenging as this time has been, we've also been kind of given a reset and an opportunity to maybe hit the pause button for a second and give ourselves this moment to reconnect and to figure out the important pieces that bring us together. And, when we look at how this shows up in the workplace, we're seeing real numbers and we're seeing real data that's driving this conversation, that the only way forward from here is to understand this idea of brave and compassionate leadership. And so we're going to talk about that tonight. We're going to break it down just a little bit, and we'll go through that in a minute. But I want to say, I'm here with Anu, and she is, the more I get to know her, the more I just really respect her and her background and knowledge. And it's always a pleasure to share the screen with you, Anu. So go ahead and kick us off.
Yeah, thank you, Jen. By the way, I had some audio issues, so hope everyone can hear me okay. Thank you. All right. Well, so thank you, everyone. It is our honor to share our thoughts with you about compassionate leadership. And, we want to start a conversation. We've gone through an unusual year, 2020, and now we are in 2021. To Jen's point, we've been given a reset button, and how do we emerge stronger, more compassionate, more connected as human beings together? But before we dive in, I have to, really call out Jen. Jen is an amazing, amazing human being, a great, passionate leader. Her words inspire action. And, it's an honor for me to present beside her. So thank you, Jen, for the opportunity. So today we are going to talk about compassionate leadership, and we think that it is the glue that binds an organization together. So what do we, when we talk about compassionate leadership, what comes to mind? For me, it really is how we show up every day. And how do we invest the time to really build those high-quality connections especially with people who need our help? That, to me, has been most rewarding, most fulfilling, most insightful. How do I build those connections? And our conversation, our dialogue today is going to be very personal. For me, it is personal because I have evolved and matured as a leader through life lessons, and those are those powerful coaching moments when, through your journey, through your career journey, you just learn the most powerful lessons. And I would like to share a story with you. So it was about 5 years ago, and as I mentioned, life lessons, powerful coaching moments, they come at the right time in your career. And for me, it was when I met Deborah. About 5 years ago, I had joined a healthcare insurance company, and I had joined as a leader of operational excellence. And I had a large team, but I also had this very small team of specialized, analysts, they called it. And I was excited to have this team, and I had big plans. I had plans that I was going to transform, the business model. I'm going to optimize, streamline, a typical way a Six Sigma practitioner thinks, right? Then you've got numbers, you've got stats, we're going to make the change, and that was my mindset. So a few months into it, I did present my proposal to the executive. They loved it. They asked me, how soon can you do this? And I was like, no, I'm going to start right away. So I shared that same proposal with my team, my new team. And, I had these big plans. And as I rolled off these words called optimization, standardization, et cetera, to my horror, towards the end of my presentation, I was met with blank stares. I mean, there was literally pin drop silence in the room, and my team was giving me these totally empty blank stares. I felt a little deflated. I'd lost my team. How was it that these ideas that sounded so great in my own mind and to my executives were totally lost on them? So it took a little introspection. I was a little disappointed at myself that maybe I didn't do a good job. That evening, I remember I was sitting in my office, and Deborah was on her way out. She usually picked up her kids, and she was out at this certain moment in time. She peeked in, and she looked at me, and she says, we're so glad you're here. You're going to teach us all that you know. And those words were powerful because a light bulb went on in my head. I had missed a crucial step. I really had not gotten to know my team. I had not taken the time to understand them, to relate to them, and to really see how do I motivate them. So, and a big context for you, my team, they were of claims examiners. So these analysts, their sole day work, and they were hourly employees, was to make sure that a claim entered the system correctly. So as you can imagine, they did not know Six Sigma or transformation and standardization. Those were big words that they did not relate to. So I took it upon myself to really commit to understanding them. And I'm getting to the connections piece here, the relationships piece. I'd missed that piece. So I took it upon myself to really sit with them at their lunch hour. They were hourly employees. They had lunch at a very specific time, sat with them, and we just talked about things in general, this and that. And quickly enough, the conversation pivoted to, so tell us more about your interest. Tell us more about the process improvement, the stuff that you were talking about. So that really sparked that conversation, their curiosity about, what is it I knew and how could I teach them? And I taught them in simple speak. I, shared life examples, things that mattered on a day-to-day basis, things that were a part of their lives. And they were so curious and eager to learn. And what I realized soon was how quickly they were picking up things. Lo and behold, about a month down the road, our CEO was going to visit our building, and I was new to the company, so I was a bit nervous. Of course, I wanted the best impression for my department. Deborah also actually managed a bulletin board, and it was interesting that the position of the bulletin board was right in front of the entrance, so no one could miss it. And she loved putting riddles up there. And she had this brilliant idea. She swung into action. She said, hey, I'm going to put up our process up there, and even more, I will share that with our CEO. As you can imagine, I was a little bit taken aback. I'm like, okay, but I kept quiet. I'm like, wow, I've got to really let Deborah do her thing. And amazingly, the day that our CEO arrived, Deborah greeted him with excitement and whisked him away to this bulletin board that she had beautifully decorated, and the process from start to end had been best positioned. And she explained the process perfectly to the CEO. He was not confused, as I'd feared. He was happy. Others chipped in as well. Deborah drummed up this enthusiasm, and it came from within. I was super impressed with just her initiative and how eager she was to learn and to adopt our model and make it her own, that I actually commissioned a trophy for her, and that read, to Deborah, the best and the fastest learner. And she loved it. The joy on her face when we presented her the trophy was priceless, and she just couldn't be proud enough. Just a few weeks down the road, Deborah was in a car accident. She passed away. All of a sudden, she was out buying presents for her son. It was his birthday that weekend. Deborah was a young mom of about 4 kids, and her death was very sudden. When her family came to collect her things, her daughter asked me, she says, "Could you show me my mom's award?" And she would not stop talking about it. She bragged it to us every day. Those words, those powerful words, are forever etched in my heart and in my memory. See, I had my ideas on paper, but Deborah gave them color. She brought them to life. She connected the entire team with her enthusiasm. She brought us all together to achieve the successes we did. I was just enabling her. She was that glue that bound us together. And it is so true that people are an organization's greatest assets. So for me, when I look back at what powerful life lesson has helped me realize what compassionate leadership is, I think of Deborah.
Anu, every time you tell that story, it runs deeper for me. Thank you for sharing that so much. I think, you hit on so many pieces to what this conversation is about. And in understanding, how we approach this topic with authenticity, with compassion, with empathy, I think, you start to see how when we tear everything else away, it's about humanity. That's it. It's as simple as that. And, I think the easiest way to do this is through these 5 words we're going to talk about tonight. If you want to go ahead and advance that slide. So we've looked at a compassionate leader as a brave leader, and we've broken it down this way: belonging, resilience, authenticity, vulnerability, and empathy. And we're going to briefly touch on each of these. So let's start with B, belonging. So when we look at belonging, you want to switch that slide there?
And also, Anu, I think you're not in slideshow mode. In the upper right, it says click on to resume slideshow.
Oh, there you go.
Upper left-hand corner there.
Yeah.
Here.
Oh,
so we're seeing our 2 screens.
Yep.
One is the brave.
Hit the resume slideshow right there.
Okay. Give me one moment. Robert, would it be possible to switch to? I think my computer is freezing up here a little bit. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Give me a moment.
So I can present if you'd like. I've got a copy of your presentation.
That would be great.
Yeah.
If you want to just do that, Bob, go ahead. That's easy.
All right. I'll take control again.
This is the fun of technology.
Yeah.
We're just talking about.
I'm telling you, at the worst time. Sorry about that.
It happened. No worries. This is how we lead, right? We learn how to just kind of roll through this. So
Thank you.
Go ahead and go to the next one, Bob, please. Thank you so much. Perfect. So let's talk about belonging. This is where we begin. And I think understanding this idea, I've taken some time to really study belonging. And I found a lot of different information, but I wanted to highlight a couple things. For all of you who like data and numbers, here you go. High belonging was linked to a 56% increase in job performance, a 50% drop in turnover risk, and a 75% reduction in sick days. So with that, and I'm giving you this first before I even really tell you what it is, because I want you to see these numbers first. The thing that really stood out for me was the thing on the bottom there, the number on the bottom. For a 10,000 person company, this would result in savings of more than $52 million a year. This all comes from Harvard Business Review, December of 2019. Now let's talk about belonging. So we look at, there's data, there's research, it's there. So what does it mean? I think we can all think back to what it feels to not belong. I think we've all been in a place at some point that we felt excluded or left out or not seen or not heard. And I also think that there's no mistake that belonging is at the center of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Love and belonging is the middle rung. And I think that's there for a reason. I think it's a natural human need, and it's something that we all, when we have that feeling of fulfillment, of belonging, really belonging, not just, you know, there's a difference between belonging and fitting in. And I want to talk about that for a second, because I think people get that confused. Think about fitting in, right? We were young, we wanted to try to, you know, be like everyone else. Fitting in is adapting and assimilating to a group. It's us changing to be a part of something else. But belonging is actually the opposite. It's having the courage to show up as ourselves and feel, no matter what, and feel like we actually belong anywhere. There's a reason why this is important, especially today, because we're sitting in this place, you know, that developing this kind of culture, especially when we are not in the workplace, especially when we have to do this from a distance, being able to build this culture is everything. And again, going back to the data that's showing us, an overall feeling of inclusion and belonging is proven to cause employees to give more effort to the team overall. So if you think about how we connect with each other at work, and you think about all of the different things that show up for us, you know, between kids and, you know, everything else that you have going on, maybe a sick relative, whatever it is, we think about the things that are driving performance today and the things that are pulling us away. One of the things that I was studying at the end of 2019, which pre-COVID, was the epidemic, it's called an epidemic right now, of loneliness. And loneliness is a really interesting topic pre-COVID. Now it's even more so. And all of the studies that came out around that time about loneliness talks about how it affects our health, how it's a greater risk factor to our health than obesity. It's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. I mean, the stats are, it just goes on and on. But when you think about solving loneliness, which is what I was talking about in 2019, and then we turn the page into a pandemic that causes us to have to isolate, we're so much further down that road today. And that's why belonging is one of the things that will solve that. And we'll start to build that connection where we're finding disconnect. Anu, you want to add anything to that?
I couldn't agree more, Jen. I think we're all lonely in our own way, and the pandemic has only exposed that situation. And I think the more we can connect, the more we can invite people to belong. an organization is a family. It's, you spend a lot of hours there in an organization. How can you build that culture of belonging in an organization? I think that's the most important piece.
Excellent. Okay, so let's move on to R. Bob, if you could go to the next slide. Let's talk about resilience. Go ahead, Anu.
Yeah, this is very interesting. I thought about this. And we think of resilience as dealing with an adverse situation, but I think resilience is also staying positive and maintaining yourself at that wavelength, the frequency, and it's hard. Personally, for me, I mean, I'll just talk about my personal experience. Just living through the pandemic for the past year and now in 2021 has really exposed a lot of challenges and pushed us in many unusual ways. My personal experience, when back in March last year, we were asked to work from home, I suddenly found all this free time that I had kind of filled up previously with busy work, commuting, doing, traveling. And here was this big chunk of time that kind of forced me to introspect and, of course, also acknowledge my own feelings. But first, it didn't come easy, though. First of all, I tried to fill it up with all the things that I shouldn't be doing, binge watching TV, things that were just numbing, that nagging feeling of what you're feeling in a pandemic, loneliness, isolation, worry about the future. It's all too real, and it can't be buried. Didn't know how to deal with it. Actually, I heard a speaker back in March from Wharton speak about applied positive psychology, how we can train our mind to see the positive. It sounded too good to be true, but I had to check it out. So I signed up for classes, and it's a series of classes, but it has been such a deeply introspective and enlightening experience to really understand, and absorb our feelings and recognize our feelings and also be better to others by being more, having more empathy towards others, because if you're feeling it, others are feeling them too. One thing I learned was appreciative inquiry, and really simply put, it is a technique, and it's quite a foundational technique of training your mind to see the possible and the positive in an adverse situation. I did not know this, but we are all naturally conditioned to see or find 80% of the time, apply our focus on really understanding what's wrong with the situation. So imagine that we are just spending all this energy to say, this is wrong, that's wrong. What if we flip that 80-20 rule? What if we now really gave ourselves permission to explore 80% of the possibilities? It truly unlocks our own innovation, the art of possible, and kind of breaks certain barriers that really are our own. I think there were a lot of personal barriers that I just thought, this is not possible. However, that technique, that introspection, that permission to think broader and bigger and see the art of possible has really been very, very fruitful. And as an organization, we've tried new things that we thought previously not possible. Even this work remote arrangement, we do little things that mean a lot. And if we had kind of continued in our pre-COVID work setup, we would have not had the opportunity to explore this. I sincerely feel that we should really commit to see the art of possible and an eye for appreciation in every situation. We're lucky to be here, to be sharing our ideas, to work for good companies and have so much knowledge to share. And just imagine the possibilities, we just expanded on it. One example, as I thought about this, is that when organizations commit to fostering a positive culture, a culture of positivity and creativity, the natural instinct is to find out first what's wrong, and we'll start from there. And I'm guilty too. Let's push out a survey and see what's wrong. But really, why do that? Why not ask what's right? Why not ask what's working well? And why not invite the employees, your peers, to co-create that future? if we started at that level, then we've already built ourselves up. I didn't even think of it this way. So for me, this was completely mind-blowing. Just imagine if we practice this, as a discipline on an individual level, as organizations, as communities, as societies, that will be the power of humanity at its best. So for me, resilience is how do I get better and how do I not regress into where the mind kind of is not really at its best.
Yeah, that's a great point, Anu. And I think, when you think about how we naturally go to the negative, how we naturally look at what's wrong instead of talking about what's right. When I started my podcast a while back, I remember I called it the Possibility Project, which I'm bringing back, by the way. And when I called it the Possibility Project, I talked about in the very beginning of it that I wanted to talk about what's right with the world. How, there's so often we say, God, what is wrong with people? All of those comments that we make about, all of the negative. And I wanted to focus on the positive because I feel like when we do so, we attract more of, whatever it is that we're focused on. I think about resilience in this frame of mind. I want you to go back to thinking about when you were a small child and think about remembering learning how to walk. And most people don't remember learning how to walk, right? We did that way early on, and we have no memory of it. But the idea is when you think about learning how to walk, I'm sure you've all seen someone learn how to walk, right? They stumble, and then they fall down, and then they get back up, and then they stumble, and they fall down, and this goes on and on and on until they master it. And the interesting part of that for me that really defines resilience is going back to that time before we even remember. Our ability to fall down and get back up is innate. We are born with that. We've been doing it since before we can remember. And so when we go back to that idea of our ability to advance despite adversity, to go through whatever we have to go through and come out the other side, not just, puppy dogs and roses, but this is real life. This is about, being able to say, what can I focus on to move forward? And that becomes the path, which is powerful. So let's go to A. And A is for authentic. Bob, if you wouldn't mind. Yep, thank you. Awesome. So, Anu, what is authentic leadership for you?
Well, thank you for asking me that question. And every time it is such an introspective perspective. What does it mean for me to be an authentic leader? Before answering that question, I do want to relate, go back to my coaching moment with Deborah. What really struck me or stayed with me most deeply is that in Deborah, I recognized myself, my earlier career experience. Like her, started my career out as a young mom of 2 toddlers, and despite of having a master's degree in science, I really started my first job as a customer service representative, and that in working the night shift only. And that was a little strange. But I was so eager to get started and learn without compromising quality time with my kids. So back then, in entry-level roles, we didn't really have a lot of flexibility to work, flexible hours. So I took what came. However, starting there, I think I really got a deep perspective of what it means to start from a foundation, be hungry and eager to learn, and also take great pride in our work. And I saw all that in Deborah. I related my career beginnings to her enthusiasm. She brought me along. My journey as a leader has been deeply enriched through her experiences, her emotions, her joy in receiving that award, her pride in presenting to the CEO, her enthusiasm that bound us all together. I love, those were some of my best moments as a leader. Why? I think now as I'm learning more about appreciative inquiry and applied positive psychology, it really what gravitates to your core values. And her journey resonated with my own because I was invested in her success. I wanted to teach and as she asked me, you're going to teach us? I said, absolutely, I'm going to teach you. And in your success is my success. And that was the best time. So for me, it is how do I relate my own experiences to elevate others and to bring others along. So that's how I feel about authentic leadership.
Thank you for that. And I love that Deborah keeps, kind of finding her way through this. I think that's powerful. When I think about authentic leadership myself, I try to have something that I can always come back to, right? So there's this core principle for me that I try to hold on to. I call it the light principle, and it stands for love, integrity, gratitude, honor, and truth. Those 5 principles for me, those words are my guide every single day. And when I show up this way, I know I'm showing up authentically. When I lead this way, when I put this first, I know there's no doubt for me it's my true north. And there's nothing that can pull me off of that. And I think that intertwined with character and value system and all of those things, authenticity gets to the core of who we are. When I ask that question, I ask people, who are you? People start listing things, right? We list, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and we go through this whole laundry list of characteristics or titles. And the interesting part is not who you are, that's what you are. And even more so, that is what you are defined by everyone else. So it is who you are to other people. And so when I get deeper and I ask the question, no, but who are you at the core? It's amazing people struggle to answer that. It gets a lot more difficult to answer that when I'm not defined by everything else. So who I am authentically, I surround all of me with my idea of the light principle. And that's how I try to show up every day. And I know when I'm doing that, I'm being as authentic as I possibly can. And I think it's important because when we lead that way, we actually give others the permission to do the same. And that's a powerful piece of leadership. We're giving these opportunities for people to show up in these ways too. And I think that's the piece that as we continue to connect back into each other from, the disconnect that we're feeling today and the loneliness and the virtual world that we're living in, authenticity is going to go a long way. And I think that's going to take us down that path. So let's talk about V. And the V is vulnerability. And I want you to think about what vulnerability means to you. And I'm asking all of you this question. I want you to think about how many times you've felt that myth that vulnerability means weakness. Because I think there's moments that we all feel that way. And we feel, when we're vulnerable, we're in a weakened state. There's an interesting thing that came up for me when I was researching this a while back. And I saw in American Sign Language, vulnerability is actually shown 2 different ways. So the first, I don't know if you can see this, but the first is with your fingers just like this, but bent. So like moving, and the idea is that you're weak in the knees. So that's the first part of vulnerability. But the second way to say vulnerability in American Sign Language is to do this. It's almost like to bare your chest. And what that means to me when I think of that picture is Superman, right? It's that idea of real strength. And vulnerability is real strength. It's kind of an amazing revelation, you know, when you recognize the fact that if I'm real and I'm vulnerable and I'm authentic, then I'm giving others the permission to do that too. I'm going to share a quick story. When I was speaking, gosh, this was probably 5 years ago now, I was speaking to the largest tire manufacturer in the state of New York. And the gentleman who owns the company called me and said, hey, you know, found you online, saw your stuff, really like what you do, would love to have you come and speak to all of the managers of each location. There's about 37 people. Great. So I drive up to upstate New York in the middle of nowhere. I have no idea even really where I was. It was, there was a hotel and a gas station. That was about it. So I spent the night, got up the next morning, went downstairs to the conference room, got my coffee, and he had told me, he's like, you know, I'm going to kick off the meeting. You come at this time, come in the back of the room, and I'll call you up. So went down, got my coffee, went in the back of the room. I opened the doors, and it's a big horseshoe, all the chairs. And I looked as soon as I opened the doors, and it was a room full of older men. And so I stood there and I looked for a second. I thought, okay, interesting why you picked me, right? I was kind of confused. Not really. I had two choices, right? I had two choices. He had already paid me. So it was, hey, go do your thing and leave. Whatever happens, happens, right? Or it was, no, you know what? Be authentic. Go back to that light principle and give everything you have, and maybe you can make some sort of impact today. I wasn't sure of the relatability, what they could possibly, how we could possibly relate. And so I went up with that idea. I had 90 minutes. I finished, and at the very end, I did an exercise that I call the confidence resume. And it literally is a piece of paper numbered 1 to 10. And I said, okay, here's what I want you to do in closing. You're going to write down your strengths. I'm just going to give you about a minute. Go ahead and write them down, and then we're going to go around. Everybody's going to shout out one thing that you can share with everyone, and that's how we'll finish it. And it's always this fun thing, and you know, there's a lot of energy and excitement, and people go out feeling good. So I get halfway around the room, and as I'm walking, as you know, they're saying their word, I'm repeating it. I'm going to the next person. There's this nice energy. And I get about halfway, and I get to the youngest guy in the whole room, and his head's down. And I look down briefly, and I realized he had nothing on his page. And I'm thinking, this guy's too cool for school, right? He's not going to write anything down. All right, fine. So I said, okay, go ahead and tell us. Just what's one? And he looked up at me. As soon as he raised his head, I could see his eyes were filling with tears. And I said, okay, hold on. We're going to stop right here. And he looked up at me and he said, I'm struggling. I don't have any. And I thought, whoa, okay. So I stopped everything. I said to everyone in that room, I said, you all know this guy, right? And said, yeah, of course, he's great. Okay, you're going to help him fill out his page. And so now immediately people were just shouting out things. They're, you know, saying all of these wonderful things about this guy. And he's writing them down. And I said, write them down, because he was just kind of like a deer in headlights. So he wrote them all down. We finished the day. It was an emotional ending. I'll tell you, there was not a dry eye in the place at the end. We finished the day, great day. I drive home, and as I do every time when I speak somewhere, there's a feedback form. And I take them with me, and I read them that night when I get home. It's kind of my ritual. And I found his. His name was Joe. And on his page, Joe simply wrote, thank you. It said, thank you, thank you, thank you. You showed me strengths that I didn't think I had. See, I'm going through a really terrible divorce, and my wife doesn't think that I'm any of these things. We have no idea what anyone else is going through at any given moment. But giving them that permission to be vulnerable, giving Joe the permission to be vulnerable that day, gave others the permission to do the same, and to embrace him and to bring him in And I'll tell you, it was one of the most powerful moments of my career. I'll never forget it. And I share that with you kind of as a reminder, you know, we're going to fall down. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to get it wrong. But the times we get it right, in vulnerability, can be the ones that move mountains in companies. I've seen it. I've watched it happen. A year later, the owner of that company reached out to me. And he said, we're still talking about that day. You made quite an impact. And thank you. And so we can do this every single day by just allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and to be open and to give others the permission to do the same.
Jen, that's amazing. Every time you share that story, it just lights something up in me. And I think kindness has to be deliberate. Sometimes, I mean, actually, I have to be honest. I actually stole that idea from you. Every time we start the meetings, we pick, you know, a person, our team member who we want to just call out the strength. Let's just say, you know, it's Jen. Let's just say what we love about Jen. You know, what are the strengths?
It's great.
I think it just changes the mood and energy of the meeting. Yeah. It is so powerful. So thank you for sharing that. This is a great insight. Yeah.
Excellent. So let's go to empathy, the last word, and that's the E. And there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. I think this is where we get it wrong a lot, right? I think we do sympathy really well. Like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. What can I do? Right? We've all done that. We've all watched a friend go through something really terrible, maybe a loss, and we say, hey, you know what? I'm so sorry you're going through that. Reach out if I can help. I'm here. The problem with that is that we put the onus on them, first of all, to reach out to us. Now, I don't know about you all, but I'm not really great at asking for help, and especially not while I'm grieving. I lost my mom in 2013, and I remember specifically friends and people were wonderful, but all of them saying the same thing, right? You know, hey, let me know what I can do. And I remember sitting after that quietly thinking, I have no energy to reach out to anyone right now to ask for help. And it was very clear to me that I had a couple friends who were really good at just sitting with me. And so I think about empathy as not rushing to fix it, but being willing to just sit in it with someone as long as it takes. And you fix it when it's time. Because I think we rush through things sometimes just to get to the answer. And sometimes we can't do that. So a great example of this right now is starting off your meetings exactly like what you just said, Anu, or starting off your meetings with this, especially if you have a one-to-one, asking that person, how are you doing? And you know they're going to give you the pleasantries like, oh, I'm okay, I'm good. And then you pause and you look them in the eyes on the camera and you say, no, how are you doing really? It's amazing what happens because you start to see people go, the shoulders drop, they let out that exhale, and they say, wow, okay, you really want to know. That's empathy. Empathy is being able to connect at that level. The actions that we take to help our teams know that we actually care. And not just to know it, but to feel it. It's the feeling of being able to know that someone's sitting there with us. Mm-hmm. You have anything to add to that, Anu?
I think you just said it so beautifully. I can't think of anything more. I think that's true. Especially, I just contemplate sometimes, and I evaluate my own leadership style constantly. You know, am I giving a little breathing room to my team when they're coming in these meetings after meetings after meetings? Yeah. should we just hit the pause button? Should we just, and I offer a little something, you want to go get your coffee, you want to take a break, we can start a few minutes later. I think we owe it to each other to be more mindful of the pace that we actually self-impose sometimes, me, myself, you know, guilty, and let each other breathe. I think those are the few things that don't cost anything, but just show that you care about the other person and you value them as a human being.
Yeah. No, I think that's powerful. And I think giving those moments, even if it's just a moment, it's such a huge ripple effect to everyone else. So I like to share this little quick story. I like to think of empathy as kind of like a big game of manhunt. And when I was a kid, I remember we used to play manhunt, and we'd play it like as the streetlights were coming on when it was getting dark. Manhunt's like hide and seek, but in reverse. So if you've never heard of it. So one or a small group of us would hide and everyone else would go looking. It wasn't the opposite. And the game ended when either you were safely found or you made it back to home base without being tagged. And you could actually play, we did this a lot actually, where if you found someone on the hiding team, you could quietly hide with them. I like to think of empathy like climbing quietly into that hiding spot next to somebody and not needing to say a word, but just letting them know you're there and that you'll sit there with them for as long as it takes to be found. If each of us practice that kind of brave leadership, if we really reach out, not just for each other, but with each other, to really reconnect at that level. And we take these 5 letters that we've put together here and really take them, you know, understanding the importance of them, but really take them and take action with them, not just learn them and know what they are. I think if we truly did that, then we'd not crave connection anymore, right? We would actually cultivate this sense of belonging that we talked about tonight everywhere, every time we showed up. I think this is the crossroads we sit at now. I think it's this idea of compassion meets humanity. And how we lead through that crossroads, how we live and breathe with emotion, even in the workplace. We're not afraid to be authentic in our leadership and heart-centered in our influence as a leader. I think that's the important conversation. And I think that's the action we need to take. Brave leadership is what we need right now more than ever. And it's not just to save our families and our workplaces, but I think to me, and I know Anu as well, it's to save our humanity at the very core. And I think these are the things that if we can bring them to the surface now more than ever, we will succeed. We will succeed. So with that, I'd love to open it up for maybe some questions, conversation, anything you want to throw out there. Would love to hear from you.
Yeah, so if anybody would like to ask a question, if you raise your hand, I see I do have a hand raised by Emmanuel.
Okay.
Let me unmute your phone. Emmanuel, you are unmuted if you'd like to ask a question. Anybody?
Oh, just at the beginning, trying to remind you the recording button.
Oh, well, thank you. I would have forgot had not yourself or Gabriel reminded me, so I do appreciate that. Thank you. Well, I had a question. So back to your light principle.
Mm-hmm.
I captured love, integrity, honor, and truth, but I missed the letter G. Gratitude. Well, thank you.
There you go. Perfect. Good timing.
A very good presentation. I think it really touches on a lot of issues in areas of leadership, especially brought to bear because of the COVID situation. How do we stay connected and stay connected in a meaningful way that shows empathy and vulnerability?
I think there are a couple questions there.
Yeah. Okay.
For it.
Anybody else have questions?
Yeah,
I've got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead.
So before you started your presentation, I kind of anticipated what you might say, and the two things that I wanted to have addressed was actually authenticity, which was covered very well, and the other thing was accountability. And I was a little impressed that if people feel a sense of belonging, they automatically, don't take as many sick leaves and they want to help out. But have you found that in the workforce, is that enough? How do you hold people accountable when they don't get their stuff done on time? I didn't hear that addressed, except for when they feel a sense of belonging, they do it anyways.
I know you want to take that.
So it's a slow process. It's a slow and deliberate process, and that's where the resilience piece comes in, and that's where your deliberate piece of staying connected with the integrity of the whole situation. We are going to have situations that where you kind of, someone maybe just falls short, doesn't meet your expectations, but is there a reason behind it? So I would say, for me personally, the seeking to understand that, what is causing it, what is deeper, what's really the root cause of it, and is it something more, that we can facilitate, or is there something that, we can influence? So to me, it's a very real situation. So it's a great question. Jen, what is your perspective on this?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing. I think accountability stands on its own. I don't think that's ever in question. Just because we're sharing vulnerability and empathy with people who report to us does not mean that we don't hold them accountable. In fact, I think you start to see, and to your point, Anu, where people will actually share what's going on. There are a lot of times where you might see someone falling short or not doing things that they normally do, or you're wondering what's going on. The more vulnerability and empathy and compassion that's there, the more they're absolutely able to share with you, hey, this is what's going on. You might know, maybe they have a sick parent at home. Something's going on that's driving that outcome. And so there's a natural effect, I think, where people, I use the example all the time, if you go back and you watch sports and you see sports teams who maybe not on paper were not the best team, but they won anyway. Why is that? Well, why is that is because a lot of times you'll see, you ask them at the end, people will tell you it's because we were like a family. It's because the coach, we love this guy or girl, or, we want to win for XYZ. And the interesting thing about that is that, when people know that you care, they will go through a wall for you. Yeah. And I think you see that higher productivity because people actually have some pride in that they know that, this means something to me. So I think you actually see it's like a snowball effect. That's all positive. There's really not a negative there.
I think those are really great answers.
Sure. What other questions? I see a couple more here. Kelly?
I hope you can hear me.
Yep, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Terrific. Ladies, a wonderful presentation. Really quite something. I couldn't help but think, and again, I'm a real proponent of the acronym and everything that was stated. So that side, sometimes I find that there's a paradigm that's hard to overcome where so many employees, team members, crew members who feel like there's a separation between the emotional side and their professional side, their work life from their personal life. What they might deem as softer skills, that maybe it has no place, or vice versa, the leader, why is this sort of being imposed on us? And so you know, the transformation obviously is so important. The connection is so important. It's just the how to get there, you know, and have people comfortable with that transformation.
Sure. So I'll jump in here because I have watched this unfold, obviously, over the last few years that I've been really focused on this. I will tell you, I've been talking about love in the workplace before it was cool to talk about love in the workplace. I was asked to speak somewhere, and I remember this was 10 years ago now, and I was asked to speak somewhere, and she literally said to me, but I don't want anything too touchy-feely, because my people aren't like that.
Right.
And my last TED Talk that I just did actually tells this story. And I remember thinking, too touchy-feely. Did you hire robots? Because you're talking about human beings. Let's take everything else out of this and understand that I don't care who you are. Every single human being has emotion, and we have this sense of belonging that we all want to feel, as we've talked about. It's a basic human need. Today, we can't call them soft skills anymore. I'm like on this mission to change that. There's nothing soft about this. These are essential skills. These are essential skills, because if you're looking at trends and you're looking at everything that's going on right now in our world, where we are today, it is the only thing that's going to take us forward in success as any company. And you can see that with companies who are getting that right. You're seeing that COVID didn't really affect them as much. You can see that. And so I think the answer is, this isn't about throwing something at you or making you do extra things or, you know, these soft skills, that these are essential in order for us to move into 2021 and beyond as a strong, people-driven company. Because remember, at the core of all of this, a company's greatest asset will always be its people. How are you taking care of your people? That's got to come first. And I think if you lead that way and you show that, here are the numbers. I mean, data doesn't lie, right? So this is important because I think that's crucial.
And I'd like to add to that. Thank you, Jim. That was amazing. You know, spot on. I think with the COVID situation and with our remote working environment, I think the whole human aspect has become all too real. You know, and we'll be foolish not to connect on that level. You know, I think it's a real opportunity. Vulnerabilities are also opportunities, someone rightly pointed out here, which is so true, that it is important for us to go in deeper and motivate and, you know, empathize and be more authentically connected with our teams and the people we work with. Because if we empower them by being in their court, that, you know, we are in your court, then they'll do their best work. And then, you know, we will invent, we will mature, we will evolve as a society. I think that's almost needed, to your point.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. Thank you, Kelly.
No, thank you.
Terrific, Kelly.
Thank you.
Who else? I see Vic.
We have well, first of all, we have a comment from Ricardo Rios. He just says, great presentation. Do you have a book or any book that you'd recommend that we would read on the topic?
On this topic, I will tell you I'm working on one. I did write a book.
I was going to say.
Not specifically on this topic, but I do have a book, yes. Yeah, I think I actually have a ton of stuff. I mean, I could pull things out for you right now. If you want to shoot me an email to that email, I can give you some thoughts and ideas of some of the things that I have my hands on that I've been looking at and reading. But there's a ton out there, but I do have a couple that have been really beneficial. So just shoot me an email and I'll get them all to you.
Okay, good.
Give you the names.
Great. Vic Nanda is our program chair. He had raised his hand, but then I saw he also commented, great presentation. Vic, do you want to make any other comments or questions?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. No, I'm just really thanks to Anu and Jen. Really great presentation, different from our usual flair.
Awesome.
And I really like the stories that were shared, as well as I think the learnings from this, because I personally practice the emotional intelligence framework. So, you know, those 5 attributes there. And I think this nicely complements to make the leaders more human and authentic. So I thank you for that. I learned something new.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think obviously that training is critical. And I think knowing that and being a big proponent of that, I think that's how this was, you know, I tried to kind of make that fit into that because I think it's a framework that's super important. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. We have a comment from one of our attendees, Ron Tucker, who just made the observation that the BRAVE acronym reminds him of Deming's point that management must drive fear out of the organization, and that these behaviors help managers to reduce fear.
Awesome.
Fear stifles creativity and productivity. So
that's right. Absolutely.
To be more inclusive and authentic, I think is great.
Thank you for that. That's great.
Thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions? I see Ricardo
Anybody
and
else?
it looks like. Ricardo, did you still have a question?
Ricardo had a question mark next to his name. Ricardo, any questions, comments, concerns? How about Cindy Lauren? You got a question mark next to your name. Not sure what that means. Oh, you asked a question.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Yes.
Oh, I just actually said thank you. I enjoyed the presentation, so I'm not sure why a question mark showed up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Tammy, did you have one?
Tammy New?
I just wondered if the deck was going to be posted.
Yes, the slide deck is on our My ASQ page.
Okay.
If you go my.asq.org/community/home/244, that's the Phoenix section, and you'll see a post about the attachment.
I will say, if anyone has any other questions, don't feel like this is the only time you can ask them. If you have other questions or want to chat more about this, feel free to reach out to me at that email again. Happy to you know, continue the conversation with you or answer any questions. If there's anything I can do to help you with that, please let me know.
Well, we're always looking for good speakers for the ASQ section up here in Colorado Springs. So
nice. Sign us up.
Can I forward your name to our program chair?
Absolutely.
Yes, that'd be great.
We'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Excellent.
Good. All right. Well, again, Anu and Jen, thank you very much for your time and a very interesting presentation.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Bob.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right. Now I got to remember how to get back to my presentation. I hit the escape. What will that do? Let's see. How do I leave this presentation and get to mine? That's the question.
I'm going to bow out and say good night. Thank you all.
Well, thank you very much.
Have a great night.
All right.
Same here. Thank you all.
Take care.
Take care.
Okay, I'm going to share my presentation. Again, just the final few slides. Come on. Got to share first. All right. So just a few closing comments. Again, thank you to Anu and Jen for the excellent presentation. And certainly, if you have any questions for them or would like some references, please contact Jen at the email that she provided. And then again, the presentation itself is posted on our website. This extended URL actually has a direct link to this presentation. So in wrap up, just a reminder, or maybe a FYI, we tend to cross promote other sections and division information that we deem that might be interesting to our members. So the ASQ Minnesota section, they have a separate chapter called biomedical, because there are quite a few large biomedical companies located in the Twin Cities area, like Medtronic and Boston Scientific, and there's a whole handful of them. So they have a separate chapter within the section focused primarily on biomedical. Anyhow, that consortium is offering a root cause analysis workshop. It's a 3-hour workshop. It will be done virtually via Zoom on March 3rd from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. That would be our time here in Phoenix. And the workshop is 3 hours. They'll actually have lecture, discussion, examples, and they will talk about and demonstrate how to use the various tools in root cause analysis for healthcare and biomedical, such as run charts, control charts, check sheets, Pareto, is and is not, problem definition, cause and effect, 5 whys. Now, this is kind of like an experimental type workshop. Steve Zarniak, I know him well. He's the presenter. He's been doing this workshop for years and years, but it's always been face-to-face to this point. They're going to try Zoom, and so he thought, well, for this first conference, we're going to just limit it to 10. The announcement just went out, and it's open to anybody. So first come, first serve. Thought I'd make you aware of it. Now, the cost is $50 because it is a 3-hour event. But you see here is the link. So if you want to try and write it down rather quickly, or again, if you go out to our My ASQ site, this welcome and announcements presentation is also there. And this announcement is already on our homepage of My ASQ, so you get more information there. If this workshop is very well attended, and if we do have a significant segment of our members who are involved in biomedical, if this sounds of interest to you, I am sure that Steve Zarniak would be happy to deliver a similar workshop here for the Phoenix section. So if you try to sign up and 10 spots have already been taken, let me know. That way me and Pat will get an idea of how much interest there is to have something like this. But it's a good hands-on workshop. Otherwise, remember, please complete the evaluation survey that you will be receiving in the next day or so from John Lindland. We'll have the thank you letter as well as a link to a survey and a copy of your RU cert. And then for March, our program speaker on the second Thursday of the month will be Linda Westfall, speaking on the concept of Agile Scrum. So Agile is a design process developed within the software industry, and now it's expanding beyond. You now have Agile manufacturing, Agile leadership, Agile lean, but it originated in the software development industry. And within the Agile process, there are teams that are called scrums, borrowed from rugby. So she's going to talk about, well, what is a scrum? How do they perform their work? So if you would like an introduction to Agile and Scrum, this will be a great opportunity. And as a final note, for that meeting in March, we will be using Zoom because we want to try once again having breakout sessions during that first 30 minutes, the networking session. So be watching for the Zoom registration link. We will be sending out, communicating it in the chair's message, in the sundial. It'll be a separate post on my ASQ page. So there will be a registration link, and then once you register, Zoom will send you the code and the meeting ID. So just be aware, we'll be using Zoom instead of WebEx. Beyond that, I think if nobody has any comments, questions, we can close the meeting for the evening. I do want to thank everybody